I want to thank Dr. Suleiman. It was a very encouraging presentation and well done. And I know Sudan has really suffered, but hopefully there'll be hope at the end of the tunnel. There'll be some tranquility of some time. Both Sudans obviously have been having a lot of challenges. We emerged, as all of you know, not so long ago. As part of the general thinking, many South Sudanese are concerned with the way the nation is evolving. And obviously we don't want to fall into the same pitfalls and difficulties that many other nations before us have faced. So we came up with the idea of a People's Charter. It's called the South Sudan People's Charter. Firstly, I want to thank Francis and Marwan for having invited me, and I really want to apologize that I came late, but I've really enjoyed the last few sessions, and keep up the good work, Jill and everybody. The South Sudan People's Charter is a registered think tank in South Sudan. We're also hoping to register it in South Africa. It was established 2.5 years ago, started originally with various discussions on a platform called the what is it called? What is this? sorry. It's one of these platforms. The Clubhouse. It was Clubhouse. We started on Clubhouse, but over the years, obviously, we've been meeting up with lots of friends to just express our frustrations and concerns in general. So on Clubhouse, we started these discussions. We then went on to YouTube. And then we decided to, about 6 months ago, to register it as a think tank. In summary, the charter has been about studying and analyzing the emergence of a new republic in the case of the South Sudan, and also studying Sudan, where we literally just left, and Africa as a whole, for that matter. Fundamental pillars or timelines, as we all know, are pre-colonial times and the colonial era and the post-colonial. Some are saying now the post-colonial is over, but I don't know how. We're still in the middle of it. The charters look at the imposition of and the evolution of the Western European nation-state model construct and how it has impacted Africa and the bulk of the colonial world. We've attempted to dissect and looked at modern nations in Africa and how South Sudan can fare with them, what pitfalls we can avoid and what lessons we can learn from them. Even our own experiences in the Sudan, there's a lot to learn. And equally, South Sudan, relatively in 72, was peaceful. We had a peace agreement, a bit of a lull. We learned to practice democratic politics, and we're able to have a decapitated political parties in a military junta, but they were known to belong to Southern Front and SANO. We obviously, as we look at the nation state in Africa and the difficulties, we remember somebody like Basil Davidson, who was an honorary fellow here, and he's Black Man's Burden, or the curse of the nation state. Obviously, he critiqued the whole colonial experience, and we also are all concerned because I don't think it is yet to succeed, and it may need a rethink. But anyway, we've inherited a system, the colonial system, with its various institutions and structures. Basil Davidson said that he had the view that in the same way it was a curse, the nation state was a curse, in the same way that the slave trade was a curse, colonialism was a curse, and to a great extent, neo-colonialism. The think tank has engaged government, opposition, and business leaders, as well as policymakers, experts, and academics, to look at who have given us lectures and have deliberated on the salient issues and topical issues of the day in the case of the South Sudan, and Africa in general. The Charter has worked to explore and understand challenges and the woes that continue to hamper South Sudan's viability and stability, and how best we could find a governing system that would work and that would carry our people along. Obviously, like most of Africa, we have mismanaged diversity, and Sudan was a classic example. South Sudan may also be following the footsteps if it doesn't really learn from other people's experience. The Sudan, as we all know, was constructed as a ethnic, monocultural society to the detriment of all of us. And here we are today. It's a country that is really struggling. We aspire to have and we've engaged the populace as much as we can through the modern media, and we've had discussions, and we are carrying out surveys to shape government policies and to see how best services can be delivered. We also aim to formulate a People's Charter document, a policy framework, and with recommendations for an inclusive social and political contract, a paradigm shift from that reaffirms the country's independence and sovereignty through consensus building and carrying people along through open and democratic processes, dialogue and consultation. This should usher in our hope and wish a peaceful South Sudan, where we've reconciled each other, where stability has been restored, where faith has been reinstated in the nation, and the journey that our people took to get to the promised land of an independent South. We wanted to see the rekindling of a sense of urgency, because urgency has been lacking, a national spirit and the reawakening of the whole nation building process to build the country that we've all dreamt of. A major tool in the kit of this process obviously would be, how do you maintain this form of transition? And what type of educational system or educational policies should be brought in to facilitate this? Obviously, this needs a lot of thinking. We are not claiming we have a solution, but we can only learn from other people's experiences and how they fared with their own nations. Education policies, as we see it, probably are the way forward as a major shift in our thinking as a people, and in wanting to look at where our problems are and how we can educate the 70+ illiterate people of our society. 3 minutes, oh gosh. To understand why we are advocating for social transformation in South Sudan, we need to look at the state formation in the Sudan and across Africa. Obviously, I wanted to look at the likes of Sheikh Anton Duob and what they said about pre-colonial Africa, that medievally Africa did have structures and did attempt to establish and evolve like any other society on the globe. And obviously this was a testament to this is the Mali Empire, the Songhai, the Benin Kingdom, the Congo and the rest, all equally Ethiopia and even the Zimbabwean Empire was also a point in question. Sheikh Anton Duob obviously, like many other African scholars, have always said that perhaps the journey that we took with the imposition of the Western state model on us might be the wrong journey. And again, so like Mohammadi, in his book Citizens and Subjects, argued that the colonial state in Africa was two forms of powers under one system. The colonial one, or the colonialists on one side, as they, whom he referred to that process as the bifurcated state, where the colonialists managed the urban areas and the indigenous powers also manage the rural areas with administrative rights. Sorry, I'm rushing. Which would administer, and the locals manage the local chiefs and authorities. This keeping the traditional sector and away from forcing the traditional people to adhere to their traditions and their history. But he further argued that the system created a racial segregation between the Europeans, who were the citizens, and the Africans, who were the subjects. Indeed, in the case of the Sudan, where we inherited an extractive and exploitative nation state, the colonial state obviously tormented our people, brutalized them through the Turks, the Anglo-British, and subsequently the various regimes that took over the Sudan. Mansour Khalid in the government they deserve spoke about, there was no willingness among the colonialists, be it the British, the Anglo-Egyptian, or the Turks, to actually look at the peripheral communities and how they also deserve to have rights and equalities. What we wanted to mention, and I have to skip, when we think of an education system that could work, I think if Africans had to be given a chance to question the evolution for the last 60 years, many would argue that the system is misfitting and we need something else, something which is a bit more intrinsic to ourselves, that is emerged within our cultural fabric and our way of life, a way where we can address modernity and what it has brought to us, but also to reconcile the history and how we can resurrect and make sure we preserve and our cultural way of life. When we think of multicultural societies like South Sudan, we've inherited a country with 64 plus communities. And we want, like most other Africans, to have a society where there's fairness and equality and justice and across the board to everybody. But then how do we do it? Because the tools we've been given normally are the wrong tools. And our own tools mean that we must look for our values, we must share our shared heritage and experiences and struggles, but at the same time to build our sense of system on our what they call a commonwealth of values and traditions. And again, we think of a multicultural society like our own, with all its various histories, a lot of contradictions, deserves to have an educational system that could work. An educational system of this nature looks at why 70% of our population is illiterate and what can we do to make them stakeholders. One of the ways, obviously, is mass education, and we believe they should be taught in their own languages, and this is the quickest way we can make them a part of this evolving nation. Equally, as we know, the societies that we've inherited, it's been very difficult for modern elites to allow this space where traditional authorities and systems coexist with modern systems. But through a mass education that looks at the South Sudan today, only 34% of our people are educated. 70% of the rural community are literally illiterate. And the only way to actually bring them in is through schemes where we train them, where we make them adapt to modernity. Many of our people are just sitting idly, and the nation is supposedly moving, and it's not really moving. So we've had colonialism decapitate our way of life, and we need an education system that actually is built on the building blocks of the 64 communities, working together to pool their knowledge, their experiences, and what works for them. And what works for all of us is what we will use as the bedrock and the anchor point of actually shifting this nation forward. Yeah, thank you.